Good evening. I'm Spot On Weather meteorologist Matthew Euler, and we're going to go ahead and kick off my video here called the Arctic Connection. And I apologize, last night I uploaded this video and I didn't have any audio, so we had a little bit of a technical difficulty last night on the video. I'm starting things off tonight by showing you these adorable looking dogs dressed so warmly for the winter cold. Being a dog lover, I found some really funny looking pictures here of dogs all dressed to very warm for this winter season. So we're going to go ahead and kick things off, and I'm going to delve into a couple things. First, we'll start off with the Teleconnections Forecast, the latest Teleconnections outlook. Generally, we have the Arctic Oscillation on the left, and then the North Atlantic Oscillation forecast on the right. Generally, we're looking at slightly below normal negative phase for the Arctic Oscillation on the left in the upcoming forecast over the next 7 to 10 days. And then on the right, the North Atlantic Oscillation, we're also forecasting a slightly negative phase of the NAO. So in general, a slightly negative phase of both the AO and the NAO generally indicates slightly below normal temperatures for the eastern United States. Nothing significantly below normal, but maybe just slightly below normal, according to the latest, these two teleconnections. If we look at the PNA, or Pacific North American pattern, what we're generally looking for in the forecast is a positive PNA would set up a ridge in the Western U.S. and a trough in the Eastern U.S. The PNA forecast, however, is mainly a neutral one. Basically, no digging troughs out west in a strongly negative PNA phase, nor very positive phase of the PNA and a very strong, robust ridge in the west either. And that makes sense based on our migratory progressive pattern right now that we're seeing across the United States from the west coast to the east coast. So generally, a neutral or slightly positive phase of the PNA would be yielding colder temperatures across the United States as a whole from west to east. And then the image on the right shows the latest Madden-Julian oscillation forecast out through December 26th, the day after Christmas. And you'll notice right now that solid green line represents the official forecast. And we're going from basically phase 2 into that smaller inner circle, which generally indicates a null phase or no significant impacts. You see all those individual yellow lines on the image on the right, which shows, again, things going to the null phase or no significant impacts on the Madden-Julian oscillation. So I'd like to compare these teleconnections as we continue to move through the winter season, and generally what you're looking for strong colder temperatures in the eastern U.S. and a much more amplified or digging trough is you would expect to have a very strongly negative AO, a strongly negative NAO with high latitude blocking into Greenland. We don't see any of that in the the next 7 to 10 days in the foreseeable future. These two indices will continue to keep an eye on, as well as the PNA. We're not looking at a strongly positive phase or a strongly negative phase like we saw last winter time. We had a strongly negative PNA and a deep trough across the western United States, and that's where all the cold went the latter half of last winter. And again, the MJO phases, generally phases 8, 1, and 2 are the colder phases. In this case, again, the inner circle there represents a null phase or no significant impacts from the MJO. Now, I wanted to show you this particular slide just to kind of show you what the Pacific Ocean is looking like as far as the active jet stream out there over the Pacific. And with this active jet stream, you'll see those purple shaded areas there. And that purple shading indicates the highest wind speeds within the jet core or the jet axis. And these purple shaded regions indicate winds well in excess of 140 miles per hour. And these accelerated regions within the jet axis are known as jet streaks, or you may hear the term jet max. And generally what happens as air accelerates through these highest speed areas within the jet axis, it sets off a imbalance effect between a couple different atmospheric forces. And if I were to divide up these purple little areas by basically make them 4 quadrants, the left front and the right rear quadrant would be the areas favorable for lifting and possible clouds and precipitation, storm development, while the right front and the left rear quadrant is areas where you typically have sinking vertical air motion and you usually get the development of high pressure systems. But in general, very active, highly energetic jet stream right now across the Pacific Ocean. So, and of course, since our weather comes from the west to east and mid latitudes, this is very important to keep an eye on all the activity in the Pacific, how the jet stream is setting itself up. Now, again, I've talked about this in my past videos in the winter outlook, but the anomalously warm area of warm pool or higher than normal water temperatures, you'll see are represented by the orange colors on this sea surface temperature anomaly in degrees Celsius map. And we're still sitting quite above normal in the northeastern Pacific Ocean right now in the water temperatures, and that's a big factor in the winter outlook. There's also a lot of above normal water across the areas around the Hawaiian Islands, while in the central North Pacific we have blue shading, which indicates colder than normal temperatures. So in general, we're keeping a close eye on how things shape up off the Northeast Pacific Ocean, and this has not gone away. The above normal or warm pool has not gone away. Now, with that being said, take a look at the similar anomalous sea surface temperature pattern in 2013-2014 winter. You can see the images on the left there shows, especially 2013, shows a very similar pattern to what's going on right now across the Northeast Pacific as far as water temperatures go, which is quite interesting. And in general, if you look at the image on the right, the actual winter temperature departures from normal or winter anomalies are indicated in the blue shading from the Midwest to the Eastern U.S. We had very much below normal temperatures from the Canadian prairies down into the eastern United States during those winters when we have the anomalously warmer water off the Northeast Pacific. Now, of course, that's just one factor in the big puzzle piece in long-range forecasting. But it's very interesting to compare the past and kind of see how things turned out in the past and possibly will they turn out that same way again. Now, 2013-2014 winter also, Chicago had its coldest December to March on record since 1872, and Detroit had its snowiest winter since 1880 in the 2013-14 winter. So that warm pool of water in the Northeast Pacific can lead to very cold temperatures downstream into the central and eastern United States. So we're going to have to keep a close eye on that, but it's still there, and I wanted to show you that in tonight's video. Additionally, the solar activity remains very low. If you look at the Solar Cycle 25 forecast update by the NOAA Space Weather Prediction Center, this was just released on December 9th of 2019. I'm going back in time to the 1990s time frame. The y-axis or the vertical axis on the left shows the sunspot numbers ranging from 0 to 250. And then generally on the x-axis shows the years. So you can see the sunspot cycles, the solar cycles go through rapid changes in sunspot activity, generally from the peaks and then down to the valleys again. And generally this occurs on an 11-year cycle. Now, right now we're about to enter into solar cycle 25. And we're sitting right now as we enter into early 2020, we're looking at a solar minimum, and that's still going on right now. We're expecting the lowest number of sunspots to occur in April of 2020. But you will notice that's plus or minus 6 months. So plus or minus 6 months on either side of April 2020. And right now we're sitting at very low numbers, so that solar activity remains very low. And why is that important? Because that typically research has shown that results in increased frequency of high latitude blocking in the northern oceans, especially into the North Pacific as well as the North Atlantic. And with that higher latitude blocking or upper level ridges poking into higher latitudes, that typically results in a negative Arctic oscillation as well as a negative North Atlantic oscillation, okay? So I want to definitely point this out. We're still very low in the sunspots, very low solar activity. So that's an interesting and intriguing factor. Additionally, we have lots of cold air that's situated over Canada the next 10 days. The purple shading, generally this is an 850 millibart temperature anomaly chart in degrees Celsius, generally showing the purple shadings as the coldest temperatures or the greatest below normal temperature departures. And there's a huge stretch of purple shading, if you notice there, from the high far northern Canada down into the Great Lakes region of the U.S. And so this is something that can be tapped into rather easily. If we get the right type of meridional jet stream pattern, it could easily transport much colder air into the lower 48. So we do have a lot of cold air waiting in the wings over Canada right now. That's our main source region for that continental polar and continental Arctic air in the wintertime. Additionally, the polar vortex has to be factored in. We did have a little bit of a weakening of the polar vortex due to a stratospheric warming event. Now, the stratospheric warming event is nothing significant, not quite as significant as it was last year in January or in December into early January when we had a complete split of the polar vortex. I want to point out on these images, the image on the left is the European model, the image on the right is the GFS model, and look at the purple shading. This is the 10 millibar temperature in degrees Celsius and the anomalies associated with it. If you look at the anomalies, the purple shading indicates below normal temperatures, and generally that lobe of colder air from an elongated polar vortex is stretching from the high Arctic areas, the main polar areas, all the way down into southeastern Canada, and a finger of that is going into the eastern United States. So this is going to be real interesting. Now these images are around the 21st of December, around the winter solstice. So just something really to keep an eye on that may factor in to the upcoming 7 to 10 day temperature outlook. Okay, I'll go back to the final thoughts in a moment. I want to come back out and I want to go to my other video, which we're going to talk a little bit about the weather pattern now. Okay. We're going to start things off with the current weather. Really, right now, I'm in Southeast Virginia here in the Mid-Atlantic area, and I tell you what, it's pretty nasty out there. It's not been raining consistently hard, but we definitely have a very low, dull gray, gloomy type of day across the Southeast Virginia area today, as we have an area of low pressure that has developed and is moving up the East Coast with a lot of moisture and precipitation. You will notice, though, in this case, the coldest air is remaining well to the northwest of the storm itself. The storm will continue to slightly intensify, moving up to the area around Philadelphia by early Saturday afternoon on the 14th of December. There's a lot of rainfall involved with this system, and you notice it's mostly rain all the way up to New England because the coldest air is remaining well to the northwest, displaced from the actual moisture in this particular storm. So there's a lot of rain going on all the way up the East Coast right now from the southeast to New England. Now that's storm number one. This is going to move up the coast, and then by Sunday we're expecting a drying out period for the Mid-Atlantic and the Eastern U.S. as a whole, as this storm basically will move northeast and outward away from the United States. Storm number two then comes in 16th to 17th of December, and you'll notice the charts here are showing an area of low pressure developing around the Kentucky area, and we'll have another cold front which will stretch southwest along those thickness lines down into parts of Arkansas and northeast Texas by Monday afternoon, the 16th of December. There's an area of snow across the Midwest, across northern Indiana into northern Illinois, and so there may be some accumulating snows back in the Midwest with this particular storm number two. Now by the 17th, the image on the right, we see a stretch of green colors from Mobile, Alabama, all the way up through Charleston and Charlotte on into Southeast Virginia, up through New Jersey into Massachusetts. And we do have a little bit of colder air filtering in on the backside of this particular storm. So we will see some snows across Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, into New York State. But again, the rain does poke itself up quite high in latitude, the liquid precipitation on this particular storm, although there's a little bit more colder air on the backside of this one. So storm two has a little bit more colder air to work with, so we are going to see some accumulating snow Monday the 16th of December and Tuesday the 17th of December from the Midwest and parts of New England. And after that storm moves off, we're showing a colder and drier outlook for Wednesday the 18th of December. It will be colder for sure, and you will feel it if you're anywhere east of the Mississippi River. You'll see most of the country is dry, with the exception of some lake effect snows across the Great Lakes areas, downwind of the Great Lakes, Lake Erie, Lake Ontario, as well as Lake Superior and Huron. But generally, it's going to be colder and drier in the wake of Storm 2, as around the 18th, mid next week. And then we move on to storm number 3 between the 21st and the 23rd of December. The image on the left shows the 21st, image on the right shows the 22nd. Now, the models have been they haven't really been consistent in the intensity of this particular system. In fact, I looked at these models closely this morning, and the GFS had this storm developing around the 21st. And meanwhile, the European deterministic model didn't have anything at all. And the Canadian was in agreement with the European model. So in other words, the models aren't necessarily agreeing with this particular storm system on the 21st and 22nd of December. But I did want to mention it. If this were the case and to verify, then we'd be looking at a mostly rain event again. Even in the parts of the Ohio Valley in late December, as well as down to the Gulf Coast. So if you had travel plans, obviously this storm could still result in travel delays, even though it is liquid. If you're traveling into different airport hubs, just keep that in mind. If more cold air gets wrapped into the system, though, guess what? We could see some more frozen precipitation north of the Ohio River into parts of lower Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, as well as the mountains, the Appalachian Mountains stretching into West Virginia. So something to keep an eye on. Now, we do expect storm number 3 to move on out, and then that basically leads us right on into the Christmas Eve forecast. Now, one thing with the Christmas Eve forecast, we're looking at a milder pattern that's taking shape across the eastern United States on Christmas Eve as well as Christmas Day. I did look at this was the midday model run the day of the GFS. I did take a look at the latest 18Z model run, and this has shifted slightly, milder for a little bit longer now. So generally we're looking at a milder pattern really beginning the 23rd of December all the way up through 26th December. So it could be a very mild Christmas across the Midwest, down into the deep South, Mid-Atlantic region, as we just have some milder air. Much colder air is back towards the Western U.S. on both Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. And you'll notice there may be some scattered rain showers over the Midwest on Christmas Eve along the leading edge of the next cold front, which is descending from Canada. So if you look at the whole forecast across the United States on a Christmas Day, if you're traveling, generally not shaping up to be too bad, as you got a strong high pressure system out over Idaho. You do have some scattered showers into Southern California and in the Baja area, as well as some showers across the Midwest, but no major storm systems as of right now, and we'll continue to watch this. Christmas Day, moving on to the Christmas Day forecast. Generally, we have some scattered snow showers over the upper plains areas, northern Minnesota into the Dakotas. Area of low pressure kind of skirting along the Canadian-U.S. border with that snow into southeastern Canada as well. And we do see another front trying to make its way through, stretching from New York State down to Kentucky, trying to make its way through the Mid-Atlantic. Generally, west of the Mississippi River, it's fairly cold and it's fairly dry. So just keep that in mind for Christmas Day. This is the Christmas Day forecast. And then overall, the trend in the long-range models. Now, what's really been interesting is watching how these models are not agreeing with each other. So the confidence level is not too high. But in general, we're looking at an upper-level trough deepening or amplifying into the Eastern U.S. With snow showers down into the Great Lakes, again, that lake effect snow, and into the Appalachian Mountains. Just the day after Christmas, the 26th, as well as into the 27th, we could be looking at these individual little cold waves or cold surges of air from Canada, making things briefly much colder. Now, there will be some milder periods in between these cold shots, so it won't be completely cold all the time. But generally, on the 26th, 27th, just some scattered snow showers downwind of the Great Lakes again. And we do have an area of low pressure trying to develop over the panhandle of Texas, with some snow over the panhandle into parts of New Mexico, as well as some rain showers into southern Texas by the 27th. Now, again, the cold air is going to overspread the eastern U.S. in waves, stretching from Canada, the northern plains down to the mid-Atlantic region. That looks like the most likely scenario at the present time. But again, this is 378 to 384 hours out, so this is way, way out in the future. But generally what I like to do in the longer ranges far out is not really pinpoint who's going to get the cold, but generally look at the trends of the models, whether it be this operational GFS run or the ensembles. But generally, we need to keep a close eye on the pattern. It looks pretty dynamic, and it does look fairly active. Here's just a sample of the longer range temperature outlook. This is the climate forecast system, the CFS V2. Generally, the blue shading and the green shadings indicate below normal temperatures. And the orange shading indicates above normal temperature. So the image on the left shows a period from 15 December to 20 December, showing cold pretty much extending from coast to coast between the 15th and the 20th. As you make those plans, if you've got plans to travel to your destinations to be with family and friends for the holidays. The image on the right shows a period from the 20th into Christmas Day, 25th of December, showing the coldest air situated along the immediate east coast with the green shading, where temperatures could be 10 to 13 degrees below Fahrenheit below normal. So there's something to keep a close eye on. Here is the CFS V2. This is a continuation of the time period. Now we're looking between the 23rd of December to the 28th of December, a few days after Christmas. The blue shadings again indicate below normal temperatures, which seem to be centered on the mid-Atlantic and the New England states, as well as back into Western Canada. A little bit of a mild pocket between Texas on up into Wyoming, Idaho, and Oregon. So again, this changes fairly often, though, the CFS V2 with the longer range temperature outlook. So please keep it tuned here for the latest updates. And then this is a European model, generally showing you on the left the 15th to the 22nd of December temperature outlook. This is from the midday run today on the 13th of December. The peach shading indicates above normal temperatures. The blue, greens, and purples indicate below normal once again. So you can kind of see what's going on here. The image on the right shows the 16th to the 23rd of December, just before Christmas. And the European has been saying it's going to be a mild Christmas for many folks into the Midwestern U.S., all the way over to the East Coast and down to the South. So it's something to keep an eye on. GFS has been much colder. The European, meanwhile, has been milder. And I just wanted to briefly cover, when we look at earlier on in time, shorter in the forecast period, generally the models are going to match up fairly well. I'm going to give you a couple examples here. This is the 500 millibar height anomalies, or the below normal heights are in blue shading, the above normal heights are in red shading or peach color shading. And generally the below normal 500 millibar heights, they correlate to colder than normal temperatures in a trough, upper level trough, and then the peach shading, the reddish maroon peach shading, indicates where upper level ridges are located, where you have typically above normal temperatures. So in general, the image on the left is showing GFS, the image on the right, the European model, and this is valid time for, this would be for tomorrow, and you'll notice how they're fairly consistent with the placement of the troughs as well as the ridges, which we'd expect that. We know we got this upper level ridge into southeastern Canada, and then we've got this trough digging into the southeastern U.S., and that's really what's resulting in the storm we're getting as it moves up the coast now. So look at shorter term, very consistent, very similar looking between the European and the GFS. Moving ahead now to Sunday the 15th of December, again, looking fairly similar. GFS is on the left, European is on the right, and you notice the blue shading, pretty cool across much of the nation on the 15th of December, on this Sunday. So general, good agreement there. We move ahead now to the 18th of December, the middle of next week now. And again, not bad at all. GFS model on the left, the European model image on the right. And we see a deepening trough across from southeastern Canada extending into the eastern U.S. And that's when we're expecting the thicknesses to lower and the temperatures also to lower with those thicknesses, with a shot of cold air. And then we have a mid-level ridge, a mid-atmospheric ridge at 18,000 feet, poking itself up across the plain states by next Wednesday. And then we got a trough off the west coast. So very good agreement once again, all the way out through 18th of December. Very good confidence in this overall pattern. Now let's move out to the 19th of December. Again, not too bad. You see fairly good placement, similar placement between GFS and European, with a ridge across the Midwestern United States and a modification of the Arctic air that had transited through that area, a deep trough off the coast of Maine in both particular models. And you'll notice the GFS image on the left shows a deeper trough into the southwestern U.S., whereas the Europeans saying, no, it's not going to be as amplified. So we're starting to see a little bit of a difference here through next Thursday, the 19th. And then the 20th of December, this is where models begin diverging. And you'll see the image on the left, the GFS, is showing a blue shaded, a below normal heights area from Oklahoma into North Texas. And the image on the right, the European, doesn't show that at all. See the difference? So again, as we move further out in the time period, the forecast becomes more uncertain because the models, the confidence levels decrease because these models start to diverge or not agree with each other. If we move ahead now to the 21 December period and beyond, there's even greater uncertainty in the model solutions. The image on the left shows the morning of December 21st, next Saturday, when there's a trough indicated by the blue colors. There's a trough digging into the southeastern U.S., while the image on the right on the European model says, where's the trough? I don't see it. So there's a difference there. We do have warmer than normal temperatures centered a little bit further west with the European model next Saturday as compared to the GFS. So we do have some differences here. If we continue to move outward in time, the differences grow greater. The overall placement of the troughs and ridges are very similar. We've got a trough off the eastern U.S. coast, and we have a trough off the coast of California out west. And we have a ridge across the central U.S., which we believe is going to result in a milder Christmas. At least that's the way it looks right now across the midwestern U.S. as well as parts of the east. You'll notice the image on the left with the GFS model, it has a greater amplification or a greater trough over the western U.S. and a more greater building ridge over the Midwest on that GFS model on the left as compared to the European model, which shows a more flattened look. So that just gives you an idea of the differences between models and the forecaster confidence level. The shorter term the forecast, the greater the confidence level. Now I'm going to go ahead and end this video by going over my final thoughts in tonight's video. I kind of had to split things up into two particular presentations tonight. But overall, my final thoughts are this, right? And this is still continuing today on the 13th of December. There's a lot of model variability that's occurred over the past 7 to 10 days. What does that mean? That generally means I have lower confidence in the forecast beyond the 5-day period. I think the forecast is locked in pretty solidly through the 18th of December, which would be next Wednesday. I think that looks pretty good. I foresee, the storm system moving up the coast with rain, a lot of rain from the southeast to New England between today, Friday the 13th, as well as tomorrow, Saturday the 14th of December. And then I see, milder air out ahead of a cold front that will pass through the mid-Atlantic around the late Tuesday period, the 17th of December, late in the day. And then we see a much colder period. We get a quick shot of Arctic air coming down from Canada across the eastern U.S. and mid-Atlantic for Wednesday the 18th, as well as Thursday the 19th of December. And so we're going to have a period of a quick hitting shot of cold Arctic air, which is going to move across the east on Wednesday and Thursday of the upcoming week. And then by the models really, in my opinion, after that it diverges. Again, with the GFS predicting a storm system developing around the 21st, 22nd December period, whereas the European is not really going for that. So the model variability is going to continue. It's going to continue in a lot of different ways. And why is this? Models have gone back and forth from very cold-looking temperature outlooks to mild and back to cold again from mid to late December because the models had erratic model behavior, and that's mainly because of the competing factors involved. Whether we talk about those warmer than normal sea surface temperatures in the Northeast Pacific and the Gulf of Alaska, or the possible vortex elongation or the polar vortex stretching with a very cold lobe of air coming down from the Arctic directly into the eastern U.S. and southeastern Canada. In addition, we have a very fast-moving, progressive weather regime stretching across the country from the west coast to the east coast. And, the models are having a hard time capturing what's really going on because everything is so fast-paced right now in the atmosphere, where we're getting these deepening troughs. They come in maybe 1 to 2 days. We get storm development, get some rain. Away from the coast, we get more of the frozen precipitation. Then that trough lifts out. It's replaced by a ridge. Temperatures rebound, get a little bit milder. Then another trough comes in and moves in from the west. West to east, we're having a multitude of upper-level troughs and ridges that are just moving across the coast, the whole United States, really. And that's really giving the model some issues as far as trying to pinpoint what's happening in the longer range. What we do know is there's a very active pattern going on, very active weather pattern between now and late December. And we can definitely see that there's multiple storms of varying intensities. Now, the exact tracks of those storms, the exact intensities of those storms remains questionable because of how the models are handling them. So we got to keep an eye on that. Now, that subtropical jet stream right now is really very active, and it looks more reminiscent to me of an El Nino type pattern. Even though the Climate Prediction Center, they're indicating a ENSO neutral type situation in the eastern equatorial Pacific. But right now, that jet stream is very active at the lower latitudes and is transporting a lot of moisture in. And that's a lot of fuel and a lot of moisture across. We expect the southern storm track to remain fairly active as a result. And this could have an impact for holiday travelers over the next week. So just wanted to throw that at you. We do expect a wide range of temperatures, that's for certain, in this fast-moving progressive pattern between the troughs and ridges. We will see milder periods mixed in between colder periods. And, there's a potential for a colder period to exist in the Eastern U.S. between the 16th and 22nd of December. Again, this is subject to change as the models are really trying to figure things out right now. Now, the primary influence, spot on weather, winter outlook, we talked about the primary influence being mainly from the Arctic this year, with an average upper level trough across the Eastern U.S. from the Midwest to the Eastern Seaboard. We're not going to waver from that. We really believe it's going to be a colder than normal winter from the Mississippi River to the East Coast. And the main reason is, the Pacific is fairly, although it's very active with the jet stream right now, with the ENSO neutral type condition, with the Madden-Julian oscillation looking like it'll go more dormant, although it will come back to life at times in various phases, the MJO, with convection in the Indian Ocean. But in general, we're looking at the primary influence, the primary upper-level winds coming from the northwest, from the Arctic region, this particular winter. In addition, we factor in those sea surface temperature anomalies, which favor a trough and a colder than normal eastern U.S., okay? Again, if we go back to the anomalous warm pool here, we're really not seeing a cooling of that warm pool in the Northeast Pacific, in the Gulf of Alaska, and the past has proven this to occur. So now, is this a sufficient sample data set? Probably not, but we try to connect the patterns. It's called pattern recognition, and determining what's upcoming in the forecast. So that really is a good synopsis of where we're thinking right now. I really appreciate you watching this video. And I really want to take the time now to say happy holidays out there to all our followers, all our subscribers. Thank you so much for subscribing to this channel. I really appreciate it. We really love telling the story of weather to you. And thank you for your patience of the audio difficulties last night. I got a couple comments from folks. And yeah, that was technical difficulty on our end. So hopefully you enjoy this video tonight. It's informative and it helps kind of prepare you for the upcoming holiday period. If you got plans to travel, whether it be via car or via airplane, please enjoy this holiday season. We wish nothing but the best for you in the holiday season and the year ahead in 2020. And we really appreciate, I've watched the numbers go up in the subscriptions to the YouTube channel here, and I really, really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch my video. We really love sharing the weather with you, and I'll keep doing my updates as well on social media for the forecast updates for Southeast Virginia. All right, that wraps things up tonight. Spot on weather. Take care, everybody. God bless each and every one of you out there. If you're in the Southeast Virginia area, stay dry. It's a wet Friday night, and it's kind of damp out there. So take care, everybody. God bless you, and happy holidays again in advance.